Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission today is to cut through all the noise, to take your source material, the history, the claims, the counter evidence, and really pull out the specific nuggets of knowledge that define four of the world's most persistent mysteries.
Exactly. We are diving deep into artifacts, codes, and natural events that just absolutely refuse to align with the mundane explanation.
That's right. And for you, the listener, we want to give you the ultimate shortcut to being well informed on these topics. We're not just going to recount the legends of the Koso artifact, the Great Pyramid, the Beale Ciphers, and the Bloop.
No, we're analyzing why the initial mystery was so profoundly compelling, so compelling, in fact, that it still manages to overshadow the scientific resolution, even decades, or in one case, millennia later.
We have a fascinating stack of sources in front of us that detail all the human lore surrounding these legends, but also the rigorous and sometimes frustrating scientific methods used to solve them.
So our goal is to extract the facts, understand the debunking process, and explore that fundamental psychological gap between what we want to believe, something cosmic, something impossible.
And the much simpler, organized human or natural truth.
These are cases where you have engineering genius, geological misidentification, the physics of sound, or maybe even just good old-fashioned literary fraud, all combining to challenge our timelines.
And we're going to start where so many great conspiracies begin, with a seemingly impossible object found inside a rock.
The Koso artifact.
Okay, let's unpack this fascinating piece of, well, alternative history, the Koso artifact. This story begins in the winter of 1961, which is a key detail because the context of that era and the location, it's everything here.
The setting is absolutely crucial. It was February, high up in the Koso Mountains of California, specifically near the small town of Olancha, at an elevation of about 4,300 feet.
So a remote area.
Very rugged, very remote, and this is the important part. It was, at the time, absolutely littered with the remnants of 20th century mining and prospecting operations.
Right. And this is where we meet our key players. Three rock hunters. Wallace Lane, Virginia Maxey, and Mike Sell.
And they weren't on some grand archaeological expedition, looking for ancient tech. They were just out looking for geodes.
Those unassuming rocks that, if you're lucky, hide sparkling crystal treasures inside.
Exactly. And they found what they called a promising specimen, just an interesting clump of rock and clay.
But the narrative takes an immediate turn toward the extraordinary when they try to process their find.
It really does.
Yeah.
Mike Sell, the following day, decided to cut the specimen open with a diamond saw, which is a pretty standard tool for rock cutting. But the source notes that the blade shrieked and nearly seized up.
Wow.
Yeah, which suggests that whatever was inside was incredibly hard, immediately elevating this find beyond just a typical geode.
And when they finally managed to split the rock, they discovered the artifact itself. This is the moment the legend is born.
It truly is. Inside this hard casing was a perfectly circular cylinder. It was made of what looked like porcelain or white ceramic, about 3/4 of an inch in diameter.
And running right through the center.
A 2-millimeter shaft of bright, untarnished metal. The fact that the metal was still bright after supposedly being sealed away for millennia was an immediate point of intrigue.
But it wasn't just a rod and a cylinder. The internal components made it unmistakably mechanical, didn't they?
Absolutely. They found these mysterious fragments, bits of copper wire, small nail-like objects, and other components, suggesting a highly organized, advanced mechanical device.
But the real smoking gun, the definitive evidence that fueled all the controversy, came from the X-rays.
Yes. When they X-rayed the entire specimen, they revealed a tiny spring, or a helix structure, positioned inside that ceramic cylinder.
So if you put all those components together, a ceramic insulator, a central metallic rod, the spring, the copper fragments.
The entire assembly bore, and I'm quoting from the original descriptions here, an uncanny resemblance to a modern spark plug.
That uncanny resemblance is the entire engine of this story, because the claim wasn't just that they found a spark plug, it was where they found it.
Exactly. The core claim, the one that propelled this into the Opart the Out-of-Place Artifact Hall of Fame, was the estimation of the casing's age. The discoverers claimed the surrounding rock, which they thought was a geode, was at least 500,000 years old.
500,000 years. I mean, that places sophisticated technology squarely in the early Paleolithic era, long before Homo sapiens developed even rudimentary stone tools, let alone ceramic insulators and metal alloys.
You are challenging 500,000 years of established human history with a single object.
And the cultural reaction was predictably massive.
Oh, yeah. Creationists loved it. They used it to challenge conventional geological timelines. Alternative archaeology and ancient astronaut circles seized upon it as irrefutable proof of a lost advanced civilization, or, more dramatically, evidence of extraterrestrial visitors who left behind their equipment.
It was so compelling because the object looked industrial and the rock looked ancient. But the rigor of science, or maybe more accurately, the rigor of mechanical historians, eventually provided the much less exciting but far more probable truth.
Right. So first we have to address the geology. The rock wasn't a standard geode. Geodes are usually defined by layers of silica or calcium carbonate slowly deposited over vast periods.
But this was different.
This was, according to detailed analysis later, a concretion.
And the distinction between a geode and a concretion is vital here. So how does a concretion form, and more importantly, how fast?
A concretion is essentially a hard mass of sediment clay, sand, gravel that gets cemented together by mineral deposits, often around a foreign object that acts as a nucleus.
Okay.
Now, if the chemical and moisture conditions are just right, especially in an arid environment like the Coso Mountains, where mineral-rich water is constantly evaporating, this process can happen incredibly quickly.
How quickly are we talking?
We're talking decades, not 500,000 years. The initial age estimate was based on a completely flawed premise about how fast these things can form.
So the timeline is shattered. Now we pivot to the artifact itself. What specific detective work sealed the debunking?
That really came down to the meticulous technological comparison conducted by researchers like Pierre Stromberg and Paul Heinrich. They didn't just stop at "it looks like a spark plug." They used the original X-rays and descriptions to try and determine the make and model.
And the sources confirm a near-perfect match with
A 1920s champion spark plug.
A 1920s champion.
Specifically, models used in the early automobile era. I mean, that is a wonderfully specific detail that completely grounds the mystery in reality.
And the geographical context makes this explanation basically airtight.
Absolutely. The Coso Mountains, being an area of extensive mining and prospecting in the 1920s and 30s, were populated by vehicles like Model T Fords and other early industrial equipment, all of which used those exact spark plugs.
So a discarded, maybe faulty spark plug just lands in a mineral-rich puddle of mud or sand.
And then gets rapidly cemented into a hard concretion. It perfectly explains every single component they found: the ceramic insulator, the brass components, the steel shaft, everything.
It's the perfect example of how the context, the history of early 20th century mining debris, trumps the appearance of ancient impossibility.
But here's the critical element that allows the myth to persist to this day: the ultimate status of the Coso artifact.
It's gone.
The object itself vanished. Virginia Maxey, one of the original discoverers, claimed it was stolen sometime in the 1960s.
And that is the ultimate defense mechanism for the conspiracy theory, isn't it? Without the physical object, without the ability for modern researchers to take new samples, perform chemical analyses on the metal, or definitively date the concretion,
The skeptic has to rely entirely on the historical record, old photos, and the comparison to the 1920s champion.
and the true believer can always counter with, they covered it up, they stole the evidence because it proved their timeline wrong. It leaves just enough ambiguity, that lost physical piece, to keep the idea of the 500,000-year-old plug alive.
The Coso artifact serves as a potent cautionary tale. It shows how easily an initial mystery, fueled by flawed geology and the subsequent loss of evidence, can completely eclipse the mundane, rigorous truth.
From a small, lost artifact, we pivot to a colossal structure that is anything but lost: the Great Pyramid of Giza. It stands today as the single most enduring human mystery, precisely because we know exactly who built it and when.
But the how still defies our basic understanding of logistics.
The foundational facts are just staggering. Built around 4,500 years ago during the Fourth Dynasty, it was the tomb for Pharaoh Khufu. It stood 481 feet tall, and is composed of roughly 2.3 million precisely cut limestone blocks.
And to really emphasize the scale for you, the weight of those blocks varied from 2.5 tons.
Which is like a modern SUV.
Right, up to a staggering 15 tons for the core structure blocks.
And that sheer, overwhelming scale contributed to its historical dominance. For almost 4 millennia, until the 14th century, it was the tallest human-made structure on the planet.
Its longevity is a testament to the staggering precision the ancient builders achieved, which is exactly why the mystery persists. The engineering resists comprehension.
Let's talk numbers, because this is where it gets really interesting. The precision details are what separate the Great Pyramid from other historical construction projects.
Take the base, for example. It's a near-perfect square with sides measuring approximately 230 meters. The deviation between the longest side and the shortest side is less than 58 millimeters.
58 millimeters, over 230 meters. You'd be hard-pressed to achieve that consistently today on a structure that size, even with lasers and GPS. It's incredible.
And the alignment is even more profound. The pyramid is aligned to true north with an accuracy of 3/60ths of a degree.
So this isn't a rough alignment using the North Star.
Not at all. This requires precise astronomical observation and advanced geometry, achieved thousands of years ago using methods we can still only speculate about.
In this precision, it naturally leads us into the mathematical rabbit hole that fuels so many of the conspiracy theories. The pi relationship.
Yes. If you calculate the ratio of the pyramid's original perimeter to its original height, it very closely approximates 2 pi.
Meaning the height of the pyramid relates to its base perimeter exactly as the radius of a circle relates to its circumference.
Exactly.
So as analysts, how do we handle a geometric coincidence this profound? Is there any mainstream theory that suggests the Egyptians intentionally knew and encoded this kind of high-level math? Or do we just have to dismiss it as confirmation bias?
That's the core debate, really. Mainstream Egyptology suggests that while the result is 2 pi, it was likely an emergent property. Something achieved using highly accurate construction techniques and an iterative process, perhaps relating to the circumference of a giant drum or a measuring wheel.
So not necessarily by them knowing the abstract mathematical constant pi as we define it today.
Right. But the pyramidologists, those who argue for encoded knowledge, they see this as absolute proof.
For them, these dimensions encode fundamental scientific knowledge: the speed of light, the precise distance to the sun, exact polar measurements of the Earth.
The theories argue that the builders be the advanced humans from a lost civilization like Atlantis or extraterrestrial architects, intentionally embedded this knowledge into the stone for future discovery. The math gives the whole structure this grand, cosmic purpose beyond just being a tomb.
Which, satisfies that psychological need for human history to be more exciting and complicated than just a very powerful king wanted a really big tomb.
It does. But when we look at the mainstream archaeological explanation, which is supported by hard evidence, we see profound human capability, not alien intervention. The ancient Egyptians were extraordinary engineers who solved massive logistical problems through sheer absolute organization.
We're talking copper tools, incredibly strong ropes, wet sand to reduce friction, massive wooden sledges, lever systems.
And crucially, a highly organized workforce operating under absolute royal authority. The sources note this is a massive state-run enterprise, employing tens of thousands of skilled workers and laborers in rotating shifts.
And we have tangible proof of their logistical genius now. The most powerful evidence came in 2013 with the discovery of the Diary of Merer.
The Merer Diary is so vital. It's not a theory. It's a first-hand account.
So tell us, what does this papyrus actually describe?
Merer was an official who managed a team of around 200 men. The papyrus details the logistics of transporting the high-quality white limestone blocks, the casing stones, from the Tura quarry, which is across the Nile River, all the way to Giza.
So it's a shipping log, basically.
It is. It confirms they used boats and a complex system of canals and water transport during the annual Nile flood season to move the material efficiently right to the base of the construction site.
That shifts the discussion entirely. It proves the who and the when of the material movement and confirms they were using water transport and highly organized teams to manage the flow of 2.3 million blocks.
But even with that detailed account, some engineering questions truly remain unsolved, particularly regarding the internal structure. They do. The biggest challenge that still causes debate among engineers and archaeologists is the massive scale of the internal weight. We know they used ramps to get the regular limestone blocks up, but how exactly did they lift and position the massive granite blocks in the king's chamber?
And those are the 80-ton monsters, aren't they?
Precisely. They're estimated to weigh up to 80 tons each, and they sit hundreds of feet above the base. Moving a 2.5-ton block using sledges is a massive task. Moving an 80-ton block 140 feet up and placing it with that kind of precision, that is a staggering challenge that still lacks a definitive, universally accepted explanation.
And that is the gap the conspiracy theorists exploit. If we can't explain the 80-ton blocks, then the alien argument still has a foothold.
Then you have the mysterious shafts. These narrow shafts leading out of the king's and queen's chambers point toward specific, historically important stars: Orion, Sirius.
Was this purely religious, reflecting the pharaoh's cosmic journey, or was it, as the pyramidologists claim, tied to that encoded astronomical knowledge? We don't have the definitive answer on their purpose.
And what about the Grand Gallery? It's this incredible internal space with its corbelled ceiling soaring 28 feet high, but its actual function is still debated.
Was it just architectural flair, or was it some kind of complex internal ramp and counterweight system designed specifically to raise those 80-ton granite blocks?
The paradox, ultimately, is that the structure is so impossibly precise and perfect that cognitively it's just easier for us to believe it required impossible builders than to accept the profound capabilities of human ingenuity 4,500 years ago.
It feels better to attribute the pyramid to space travelers than to a system of collective human organization that, in its own way, is far more miraculous and far harder to replicate in the modern age. The real wonder is the demonstration of human will and logistics.
Absolutely.
Let's transition now from the monumental certainty of the Great Pyramid to something that might be pure, beautiful fiction. The Beale Ciphers. This is a story about hidden treasure, cryptography, and the immense human cost of believing in a partially solved mystery.
The origin story is the perfect setup for a legendary treasure hunt. The story first appeared in an anonymous pamphlet published in 1885 in Lynchburg, Virginia.
And the core legend involves a man named Thomas J. Beale, who in the 1820s allegedly entrusted a locked iron box to Robert Morris, a local innkeeper.
The location is extremely specific, which gives the story weight. Treasure buried somewhere in Bedford County, Virginia, about 4 miles from Buford's Tavern.
And Beale, supposedly the leader of a massive gold prospecting expedition out west, never returned to retrieve his property.
So Morris, showing incredible patience, waits 23 years before he finally forces the iron box open.
23 years.
Inside, he finds 3 encrypted documents. Cipher 1 for the precise location, Cipher 2 for the staggering contents, and Cipher 3 for the names of the rightful heirs. Just 3 pieces of paper covered in strings of numbers.
The key to the entire saga, the thing that sustains the belief 2 centuries later, is the critical twist. The pamphlet's anonymous author claimed they spent decades trying to crack the codes and finally succeeded with just one of them.
Just one. Cipher number 2.
And Cipher 2 is the cornerstone of the whole legend. The anonymous author discovered it was a classic book cipher. The key document needed was the Declaration of Independence.
For you, the listener, let's walk through the genius of using the Declaration of Independence as a key map. It's more complex than a simple substitution.
Right. It's not A equals 1, B equals 2.
No, a book cipher works by assigning a number to every word in the key text. So if your cipher reads 15, 34, 100, you find the 15th word, the 30th word, the 4th word, and the 100th word in the Declaration of Independence.
Okay.
Then you take the first letter of each of those words, string those letters together, and you get your message. The difficulty lies in having a key document long enough to contain all the numbers in the cipher, and the Declaration is perfect for this.
And what Cipher 2 revealed is the staggering payoff.
It really is.
Yeah.
2,921 pounds of gold, 5,100 pounds of silver, and $13,000 worth of jewels, all valued in 1820s dollars.
Which, in today's value, accounting for inflation and the sheer weight of the precious metals, is an estimated $60 million worth of treasure.
If I knew that code was out there, I think I'd be tempted to spend a weekend with the Declaration myself. That figure is the real emotional driver, isn't it?
It provides the motive and the justification for the obsession. But the crucial documents, Cipher 1 for the location and Cipher 3 for the heirs, remain completely unbroken 2 centuries later, despite us having computers, digital processing, and statistical linguistics.
And the hunt for the key has been monumental. People have treated this like the holy grail of cryptography, cycling through every historically important document imaginable. The U.S. Constitution, the Magna Carta, the Bible, even various works by Shakespeare.
So what does modern analysis of Ciphers 1 and 3 tell us? Because if they're legitimate book ciphers, even without the key, there should be patterns.
And that's the devastating evidence for the skepticism camp. Statistical linguists have found virtually no discernible patterns or structural consistency within ciphers 1 and 3 that would indicate a genuine book cipher awaiting a standard key text.
So they just look like random numbers.
They largely resemble random strings of numbers, which suggests either a level of encryption far beyond a simple book cipher, or, more likely, a magnificent hoax.
Which leads us directly to the great counter-argument, the hoax subplot. If it is a fiction...
The second and most damning are the linguistic inconsistencies or anachronisms within Beale's supposed 1820s letters. The letters contain words and phrases common in the 1880s when the pamphlet was published, but that were not yet in common usage or did not exist at all in the 1820s.
Can you give us an example of that linguistic flaw?
Sure. One analysis points to the usage of certain frontier slang and specific grammatical constructions that only became prevalent after the Civil War. For instance, if Beale used a phrase like "a hell of a time" or the word stampede in a way common in the 1880s, it strongly suggests the author was writing post facto, using the language of their own time, not the 1820s.
And the writing style itself is suspicious.
Very. The writing style of Beale's purported letters suspiciously matches the flow and style of the anonymous pamphlet author, leading many to conclude that the author, likely James B. Ward, the publisher, or a local figure like James William Risqué, fabricated the entire narrative just to sell a pamphlet.
Yet, if it was a hoax, it's a peculiar one. The source notes the publisher earned very little from the poorly selling booklet. Why go to such exhaustive, complicated effort? Creating 3 ciphers, 2 of which are perfect gibberish, writing convincing fictional letters, and including verifiable details about 1820s frontier expeditions, just for a poorly selling item.
And that's the enduring puzzle. The common theory is that the solvability of Cipher 2 was the proof of concept.
Oh, okay.
It was a cryptographic appetizer designed to generate just enough belief proof that the system works, to keep the treasure hunt going forever. It's what gives people hope that they are perpetually one breakthrough away from completion.
If all 3 ciphers had been obviously fraudulent, the legend would have died decades ago.
Exactly. But the human cost of this persistent hope is not just financial, it's physical. People have dedicated entire lifetimes and spent fortunes excavating Bedford County, Virginia.
The source material is clear about the tragic consequences. Landowners have had their property destroyed by treasure hunters using heavy machinery, backhoes, and metal detectors, convinced they're about to find the vault.
And we have documented tragic accounts, including one man who died in a tunnel collapse while searching for the vault, driven by the belief in that $60 million promise.
So we are left with the ultimate paradox. Scenario A, it's complete hoax, and the greatest hidden treasure in American history is just ink on a page.
Scenario B, a $60 million iron vault still waits beneath Virginia soil, its location protected by a perfect, genuine code that simply hasn't met its match yet. Psychologically, why does Scenario B always seem to win?
Because we want to believe in the enduring power of a secret. The silence of ciphers 1 and 3, for many, is not a sign of them being random numbers. It's a sign of their perfect encryption.
It's the ideal blend of verified truth, the declaration key and the spectacular contents, and complete silence, the location. The mystery persists because it appeals directly to the treasure hunter latent in all of us.
We're transitioning now from artifacts and codes to a mystery delivered by the natural world, a sound so loud and strange that for 8 years it convinced the public that a massive, unknown deep-sea monster was roaming the oceans, the bloop.
This event took place during the summer of 1997 in the remote South Pacific. The tools involved were highly specialized. The hydrophone arrays operated by the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA.
And these systems were originally designed during the Cold War to track Soviet submarines, utilizing the unique properties of underwater acoustics.
Right, so this network of military surveillance sensors, repurposed for oceanography, suddenly picks up something completely unexpected while monitoring marine life and volcanic activity.
And on May 19th, 1997, it recorded the event. The sound was located roughly at 50 degrees south, 100 degrees west.
And that location is key to the lore. It's extremely remote, about 1,750 kilometers west of the southern tip of South America, deep in the desolate South Pacific.
So describe the bloop. What defined its acoustic signature?
It was an extremely powerful, ultra-low frequency sound, way below the range of human hearing, but readily picked up by the deep hydrophones. Crucially, its sound profile was organic. It rose rapidly in frequency over about 1 minute before fading away.
And this specific upsweep profile is characteristic of sounds made by living creatures.
It is. But the magnitude is what truly defines this mystery.
Yeah.
This sound was so loud it was detected by sensors spanning over 5,000 kilometers apart.
5,000 kilometers.
That alone makes it one of the loudest underwater sounds ever recorded. And that staggering volume and range are what instantly suggested something enormous.
Blue whales, the largest animals on Earth, produce calls that reach around 188 decibels.
And bloop was significantly louder. And the acoustic characteristics didn't match any known source, biological or man-made.
Marine biologists openly noted that if this sound was biological, the creature responsible would have to be dramatically larger than a blue whale, far exceeding the largest animals currently known to science. And that's all the spark the public needed.
And cue the speculation and the immediate plunge into popular culture. The unknown Leviathan theory took hold. An ancient creature, a survivor from prehistory, hiding in the abyssal plains.
And here's the wonderful, bizarre fiction connection. The coordinates, 50 degrees south, 100 degrees west, are tantalizingly close to the fictional location of our awe.
The sunken city in H.P. Lovecraft's stories, the domain of Cthulhu. This connection provided instant narrative fuel for cryptozoologists and science fiction enthusiasts alike.
It's hard to blame the public for their jump to giant monsters when you consider the reality of the deep ocean frontier. We have mapped more of Mars' surface in high resolution than we have the ocean floor.
The deep trenches, the Haddle zones, deeper than 6,000 meters, are essentially alien environments on our own planet.
Yeah.
The biological possibility of unknown, gigantic fauna existing there is plausible, even if it's improbable.
Before we get to the resolution, we need to address the physics. How does a sound, even a very loud sound, travel 5,000 kilometers through water? That is physically counterintuitive to our experience on land.
This is the critical technical nugget for you, the listener. The reason the sound traveled so far is due to the deep sound channel, or the SOFAR channel. That stands for sound fixing and ranging.
Okay, the SOFAR channel.
It's this layer deep in the ocean that's characterized by a specific combination of temperature and pressure that minimizes sound velocity.
So it's not simply the sound being loud, it's the water column itself focusing it.
Exactly. When sound waves hit this channel, they are refracted inward, repeatedly bounce back toward the center of the layer rather than escaping to the surface or the bottom. It acts like a natural planet-sized optical fiber for sound.
Which magnifies the scale of something normal by allowing its acoustic signature to travel globally, not just locally.
Precisely. So after 8 years of speculation, the Cthulhu theories, and the fascination with the unknown, NOAA scientists provided the resolution in 2005.
What was the cold, hard, physical truth that traveled 5,000 kilometers?
They analyzed the sound profile and correlated similar sound events precisely with seismic activity. NOAA concluded that bloop was not biological at all. It was caused by ice quakes.
Ice quakes.
Massive, non-seismic fracturing events caused by icebergs breaking away from Antarctic ice shelves.
So it was the sound of an ice monster being born, not dying.
You could say that the scientific evidence fit perfectly. The specific acoustic signature, the low-frequency rumble followed by the characteristic upswing, matched the known signatures of large-scale ice fracturing and calving. The timing and the location were entirely consistent with Antarctic ice movements and drift patterns. The mystery just dissolved into cold physics and glaciology.
Yet, even knowing it's just ice breaking, there's still something primal about the recording. Why does this sound, more than perhaps any other mystery we've discussed, still hold that lingering feeling of the unknown for the public?
The persistence comes down to acoustic misidentification amplified by that SOFAR channel. The sheer scale of the phenomenon is what confuses us. It reminds us how alien Earth's oceans are, how vast the unexplored territory is, and how the physics of sound transmission in deep water can make the mundane seem monstrous.
Right.
Even if the analysis is correct, listening to a sound that powerful still triggers that ancient part of the brain that whispers, something huge is out there. It highlights that Earth is still capable of hiding its processes in depths we can hear but rarely see.
We've covered 4 phenomenal cases today, charting the journey from baffling phenomenon to scientific resolution, or at least detailed skepticism. Let's synthesize what these 4 stories teach us about the psychology of the unknown.
We can really boil down these 4 persistent mysteries into 4 categories of belief and misdirection that keep us hooked. Firstly, the COSO artifact. This represents the power of misidentification amplified by lost evidence. It shows the ease with which human expectation, that desperate desire for proof of ancient sophisticated technology, can completely ignore the mundane context of 1920s mining debris, especially once the key physical object is gone.
Secondly, the Great Pyramid. This is the myth of impossibility. It's the ultimate monument to the persistence of myth when human achievement seems too perfect to be credited to Bronze Age engineers. We prefer the complicated answer alien architects over the simpler, more elegant explanation of profound human organization and collective will.
Thirdly, the Beale ciphers demonstrate the power of the partially solved puzzle. This is the literary masterwork of sustaining a centuries-long search based on one perfectly constructed, partially solved clue. And the $60 million potential gives that belief a high emotional and physical cost, driving people to dedicate their lives to a potential literary fraud.
And finally, the bloop. This illustrates the temporary creation of monsters through sheer scale. It highlights how the physics of sound transmission in the vast unknown of the deep ocean, the SOFAR channel effect, can make a natural, predictable process, like an iceberg cracking, seem like an unknown entity from the abyssal depths.
And the common thread across all four, which we saw repeatedly, is that psychological preference for the grand, complicated, and sensational answer.
The extraterrestrials, the leviathans, the hidden fortunes.
Right, over the simpler, more logical, and rigorous explanation, a common spark plug, an ice shelf, or truly remarkable human logistics.
It feels better to believe we were visited by ancient astronauts who left behind blueprints than to accept the almost frightening capability of centralized, determined human labor 4,500 years ago. The belief in impossibility is often more comforting than the reality of human genius.
And while we have found strong resolutions for COSO and Bloop, let's acknowledge the genuine unknowns that will keep researchers going for generations. Despite the evidence provided by the Diary of Merer, the ultimate mechanics and construction methods required to lift those 80-ton granite blocks inside the king's chamber, that remains a detailed engineering mystery.
And despite the statistical analysis casting heavy doubt on the Beale story through linguistic anachronisms, the authenticity of Ciphers 1 and 3 still holds us captive. Is there a key out there that we simply haven't found? Or is it simply the greatest, most costly piece of literary fraud in American history?
The enduring nature of these debates reminds us that mysteries are often more about human psychology and our relationship with history than they are about the actual physical facts.
So, here's a final thought for you to mull over. If the human organization and logistical mastery required to build the Great Pyramid is the true marvel, something later generations struggled to comprehend, what seemingly impossible modern technological mystery, perhaps something like the creation of the global internet infrastructure, the precise engineering required for particle accelerators, or the immense logistics of constructing and maintaining the International Space Station. What will 4,500 years of future speculation eventually attribute to alien intervention when it was simply human ingenuity and collective organized effort? The real wonder, it turns out, is always us.